What's up, guys, and welcome back to another first look at Planet Coaster Console Edition. In this video, we're going to be talking specifically about the path system. Is it good, or is it still kind of garbage like it was in the PC version? Now, in the next video, we're going to be covering terrain, so if you guys want to click just above my head here, you can catch that video right there. But let's continue on with the paths for now. So to get to the path tool, what you want to do is hit either LB or RB on your controller, and that's going to take you over to the path editor. Click A to open that up, and that's going to bring you into the path interface. And we're going to start by just cycling through all of the different path types that you can use. The first one, stone slab path. Not a bad path option. I think it'd be good for if you did the biome in the fall. It looks like maybe there's some leaves in there as a texture, which is pretty sweet. The next one we have is probably the most common for all theme parks around the world, and that's the asphalt path, mainly because it's super cheap and easy to maintain. Whereas if you did something like the wood one, if a plank were to break, I would assume it's very, very costly to be able to replace that plank, or maybe you'd even have to cut out a larger section of it. I have no idea. We have the same thing but vertical. Then we have the brick path, which is super fancy. This is a good path to use for the main entrance of your park, especially if you're doing more of that classic theme look. We have the stone shell path, which looks pretty nice as well. Cobblestone, very medieval-esque. We have the square flagstone path. The vinyl path, which I didn't even know existed. It looks pretty good though. I can appreciate that. That's probably a good one for sci-fi-esque types of parks and stuff like that. But you guys can probably tell when you do change the path, it also changes the texture of the curb, or I guess the border of the path as well. So from vinyl to now gravel, you can see gravel has a wooden curve. You can turn this off in the settings, but we'll get more into the settings here in just a minute. And we have natural path. We have the well-trodden natural path, which from what I understand just adds sort of a footprint type of texture. These ones are pretty cool because they just have these posts as sort of markers for where the path should be, whereas these other ones have a very clear, well-defined path. Then we have the same thing, except it's now railed instead of those wooden posts. And again, the well-trodden version of that. The blue path is something I've never used before, but I've always wanted to. I think it'd be awesome for an Atlantis-themed theme park, or something along those lines. I don't know, an underwater theme park maybe. Then we have the Planet Coaster logo path, which you can't actually see because the path isn't wide enough for you to see that texture, but that's okay, we'll see it later on. Next we have sandstone, which would be good for like a pirate themed park potentially. Flagstone, again, sort of medieval looking. The red swirly path, I want to say, is the default entry path. You guys can see we already have one right over to the left here, but I think it's the default path for any sandbox or challenge park that you could possibly start up. You can change it a little ways up, but honestly not that far. If I were to change this to flagstone, you can see we can change it, can change it, can change it, and then as soon as we hit past our park barrier, we cannot change it anymore. There is a setting, I want to say, that you can adjust, but I'm really not quite sure. And then moving on from red swirly path, we have the purple pattern path, which again, I've never used, but it does look pretty cool. So what I'm going to do now is essentially place down each and every one of these different path types, just so we can really see what they look like when they're up against the others. And of course, I made an oopsie. Now, how do you delete paths, you might be asking? Well, open up the path editor yet again, press RB all the way over to the right, and you can see this little bulldozer icon here. Now if you just hit A on whatever path you want to delete, there it goes. Pretty simple. Now I will say that from the PC version coming over to this game, I do think that path deletion is considerably easier on PC, just because there's keybinds that you can set up to be able to delete it, whereas this, you have to be on the path editor in the bulldozer tab. There is no other way to do it. But as you guys can see here, we have all the paths laid out in front of us. Now, as I mentioned, the texture of the path will change, but the texture of the curb on the edges of the path also changes. So maybe keep that in mind. There is an option for you to disable curbs on paths if you don't like a particular curb. Like maybe I wanted to use this vinyl path here, but I'm not going for a sci-fi theme, so the orange pinstripe on the curb really isn't doing it for me. Then we can open up our path editor once again, go over to the settings tab this time, find wherever it says curve on ground. It's obviously switched on. We just have to switch it off, and boom. The curb has now disappeared, but I also replaced it with a different texture. So let me put it back to vinyl so it looks normal. There we go. So now you can see this is the vinyl path without the curb. Now you can do this for any path. With this path, unfortunately, there is no way to completely get rid of these stumps, but you can hide it quite a bit. Now, continuing on with our path settings, we have the option to change the length of the path, which, as one would assume, changes the length of the path. We also have the option to widen the path considerably. Now, something I've noticed is that if I go from 33 feet wide to 32, there is visually no change. If I go from 32 feet wide to 31, there is visually a change. And if I go from 31 to 30, nothing. 30 to 29, nothing. 29 to 28, nothing. But then 28 to 27, it finally gets smaller. Now, I'm not sure why this happens. I'm assuming it's due to the fact that I changed my unit of measure from, I think, meters, I think standard is meters, to feet. I have no other explanation for it other than that. And then angle snap, ladies and gentlemen. Angle snap is probably the greatest tool ever if you have severe OCD like I do. What this is going to allow you to do is angle a path at a certain angle. Whereas if you turn it off, you have a lot more room for movement, I guess you could say. But also, if you do turn angle snap on, you can adjust the angle so you can do 5 degrees, super small like this, or you could do 45 degrees so that that is a true 45 and up here would be a true 90. The next thing is path joining. Now, this feature is available on the PC version of Planet Coaster as well. However, I would say it's much easier to use on the PC version of the game versus the console, simply because keybinds. We do not have the option on console to be able to set up particular button mapping, I guess you could say, for certain tasks within a game. So for path joining, for example, if on PC we held down control, we would be able to put a path anywhere we wanted to, right? Well, on path joining on Planet Coaster Console Edition, if you turn it off now, you can place a randy path that's not going to connect to any other path, right? Pretty cool, but also kind of annoying. Now, I don't know if a lot of people are going to utilize that feature or not. I know I used it sometimes when trying to create like super elevated staircases and stuff like that. But take this information as you will. I am by no way being paid by Frontier to say only good things about the game. They just simply gave me early access because why? I still don't know. But here we are. Now, something I hadn't figured out until literally just now. Say you want either a staircase or just a slight incline going upwards. How would you do that? Well, you hold down X and this little menu pops up. Then you can use your left stick to bump it up so it's a nice incline, or bump it up again so you get a nice staircase. Now, I actually think the button mapping on the controller matches the thing that you would do on your keyboard and mouse very, very well. Normally, it would be either U or J to tilt up your path or tilt down your path. But now if we just hold X and use our stick, we can do it just as easily. Honestly, I think this is easier than U and J on your keyboard. It's a ways away from WASD. So next we're gonna get into even more settings. Even more settings, you guys. There are so many settings to work with here. So curved slopes. This is one that we'd have to use for angling stairs up and stuff like that. So if we had a 45-degree angle path and we wanted to make a staircase out of it, what that's gonna do is curve the path rather than being, I guess, a super sharp angle. So let's see what it looks like when we turn curved slopes back off. I don't even think it works. Let's angle that back down. Yeah, it doesn't even work. So the only way to make turned staircases or turned inclines is if you have curved slopes turned on. That's actually good to know. I didn't know that. And then flattened terrain, a very important feature. Most of the sandbox parks that you start will have mainly flat terrain. Now, something I've found is that if you flatten out the ground too much, it could hinder your ability to connect certain paths together later on, just because the terrain's not exactly perfectly flat. And then tunneling. Tunneling is such a great feature when you know how to use it, ladies and gents. It is such a great feature. So on the PC version, I know I'm going to be comparing the two quite a lot, and I probably have been throughout these videos. Some of you are probably really sick of it, but I do feel it's important with a title like Planet Coaster Console Edition to try to compare it to its parent title, which would be Planet Coaster for PC. In PC, it is very, very difficult to be able to create staircases that go into the ground, both with Planet Zoo and Planet Coaster. Now, I'm curious to see if they've adjusted the issue for Console Edition or if it's going to be just as miserable. Let's find out. We're going to hold X, we're going to go down into the earth, and it is 100% not going to work. So what we have to do is actually create a railing area where it already starts to tunnel, and then and only then will we be able to go down and tunnel into the terrain. I don't know why it is this way. Truthfully, I have no idea why they've done this. But if you want to get a staircase leading downwards into the ground or underground, you're going to have to live with this super jagged looking top side, because that's the only way you're going to be able to get this to work. Now, path supports are very useful for if you're going up. Obviously, if you're going up, you're going to want something that looks structural that's going to be supporting the path that you're now putting into the air, essentially. So what path supports does is puts a column every so often when you are making a staircase upwards, or you just have a path that's flat. And you know what? I'll just show you. Okay, so the first version that I made of this did not show any path supports. I'm assuming because it's not high enough off the ground to need them, but the second version is much higher, and you can clearly see we have two sort of Y supports underneath the path, making it seem like it's well supported. Now, it doesn't actually do anything because there is no gravity in Planet Coaster. It just, well, there is, but there isn't. You know what? It's not important. I'm not going to get into that. That is not what this video is even supposed to be about. Also, I have just found out that using the bulldozer tool to delete your paths is not the only way to do it. You can also just hit Y. So sorry that I totally butchered that one, but found it, so that's all that matters, right? And all these other settings are essentially if you want to line your paths up a particular way or get rid of a railing in a certain section. It's really nothing too crazy. Next, I'm just gonna briefly touch on what a queue path is. So a queue path is, think of it like the entrance to a certain ride, right? You don't need a queue path for a food or drink facility, anything like that. The only place you need a queue path for is going to be for the entrance of a coaster or for the entrance of a ride. What this does is signifies to the guests and to the personnel working in your park if a certain path is going to be the entrance of a ride or if a certain path is going to be the exit. Exit paths are always just standard paths, whereas entrance paths have to always be queue paths or they will not work. That's just how it is, all right? Now, to wrap this video up, what I'm gonna do next is basically try to map out some paths here that we can use for the other videos for making coasters and placing down flat rides and track rides and facilities and scenery and all types of stuff like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and make a quick path here. I'll show you guys what it looks like when I'm done. All right, so this is what I'm ending up with. I don't think it's too bad. Now, something that I've noticed just using the path tool so far is that, say you have a split like this right here, but you also want to bring a path off to the left side, not just the right side. It seems like the game really likes it if you leave the path tool and then come back to it to be able to snap your path into place. I couldn't do any of this before. I have no idea why, but I couldn't. I could only place a single path section. I couldn't make any T's anywhere. I don't know if that is necessarily a bug or not. Maybe it's designed that way on purpose, but now I will be able to actually bring a path off this direction as well. So there are a couple of subtle little nuances and tricks and things that you guys can use. Say you don't really like the curvature of this path. You want it to be a lot more smooth. Well, you can place down a path there and then turn around, delete it. What that's gonna do is curve the path a lot more. It's not gonna be perfect, but it's better than having a right angle in the corner such as this one here. But I think that brings the path video now to a close. I know it's not the most entertaining, insightful video that you could possibly make on Planet Coaster, but I do think it's important to fill you guys in on everything there is to know about this new game. So with that, in the next one, we're going to be covering the terrain, but I think I'm going to wind this one down here. So once again, if you guys did enjoy, please leave a like, leave a comment, help support the dream by smashing that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Peace.